Hello and welcome to the October update. In this video I'm going to be talking you through all the progress that's been made on the layout in the last month or so. So without further ado, let's get started. So with this video I'm just going to run through all the stuff that's been done to the layout so far. Since I shot the last video we was still working on all the bench work. Been a few bits added on here and there just to sort of bring the widths out a bit wider, and any other additional support that was needed just to be in place for the elevated sections. Some point through this video I'm going to show a quick clip of how I build up on the elevated sections, because I did mention in the past video or two that the bench work didn't need to be dead level, so you've got two other opportunities after building the bench work to get everything level. This is the east end of the section, and so far I've built this reverse loop which runs all the way round, then reversed itself back up and then goes on the incline up there, and then coming out onto there. That bit there will actually be the sort of the entrance point where it comes back onto the scenery section. So obviously this is, I can't quite remember the height of that, I think it was about 4 or 5 inches high, then runs round to the lowest level of the bench work. So now we're getting well into building up all these elevated sections. I've used 12mm ply. This is the hardwood ply, and I've opted to use something a little bit thicker simply because I don't want my boards to warp. I think 9mm is probably a bit too thin. There probably is not enough bracing underneath it to sort of support something so thin. So 12mm seems a better option. And being in a loft where the environment is subject to change, so you kind of get the extreme heat in the summer and more so cold, damp in the winter, sealing the baseboards is a must-have. Whether you decide to use MDF, which isn't probably a good material to use as it's like a great big sponge and will zap all the moisture out of the air. If you do use MDF, make sure it's sealed. When it comes to picking the right product to use for sealing your baseboards, I've got the best part about 20 years experience in the decorating industry, so I've got a good vast knowledge of what product is good to use in a environment similar to a loft. And I've seen a fair few people who think that using PVA, because it's got the word sealant written on it, is a good product to use. Unfortunately, PVA isn't designed to seal a baseboard or any type of wood to protect it from the moisture build up or anything like that. PVA, though it does say on the bottle it's a bonding agent and a sealant as well, is designed really for sealing up a dusty surface prior to, you know, applying sort of plaster and paint, that sort of thing. It's no good, it won't keep the moisture out, and in some instances actually PVA has a tendency of I suppose having an adverse effect. In a damp environment sometimes PVA can actually reactivate and go back into a liquid form, so it's not a good thing to use on sealing baseboards. What I find is a good idea to use for sealing your boards up with is a simple exterior grade matte varnish, and that's all really you need to use. As long as it's exterior grade, it's designed to adjust itself accordingly to the environment that it's in. 2 coats of that is all it really needs. These boards have been sealed. What I tend to do is before they put in place I apply a couple of coats of matte varnish to the undersides, lay them down, and then a couple of coats on top. I've left the sides open because I do want the timber to breathe. I don't want to seal everything completely in, but I don't want water or sort of moisture to sort of trap itself inside. Otherwise, if you do that, then the ply has a tendency of sort of splitting apart. So the sides are open, but the top and the bottoms are sealed. So hopefully that bit of information Should be useful for anyone who's at the stage where they've opted to use MDF and think, you know what, I need to seal my boards up. That's all you need to think, is just use an exterior grade varnish or a paint. Don't use PVA. The Class 50 that's on here at the moment, I thought I'd talk about that actually. This is one that's not actually going to be on the layout in any way or form. This is one that and it's actually my favourite Locos Monarch. This actual Class 50 was a repaint, not quite finished yet. It's going to be highly detailed, so all the fancy details be picked out on it. Got the nameplates to apply, and did the blue roof as a Monarch was, and just going to be a display loco when the layout's finished. So when it comes down to doing all the stuff after the bench work and obviously building up the elevated sections, these are made out of little ply uprights. So I cut these at about 4 inches wide, and because this section along here, from this one here all the way down to that one there, is part of the incline from St David's Station up to Exeter Central. I've done that on the basis of this is I think it's about 3.5 inches high, this one. Then the one at the furthest point is 4.5 inches. So to enable me to get all the ones correctly in between, as you can see, just use a string line from the lowest one up to the highest one, then mark off each one, cut them, and they're held in place by 2 screws. At the moment I've only got the one screw in because I'm going to level these uprights as best as I can, get them so they're fairly level on the top. So if you sit level on top, just get them level. That way it gives you the first opportunity to get in everything level, and the second thing, what I normally do, similar to this, is I just screw a piece of batten onto the front edge. So they're again cut 4 inches. So the tools we're going to need for doing that: bit of wood glue, spirit level, again block of wood, 1 1/4 screw, and a decent drill. So I just basically get the screw straight into the middle, just get it in there enough just to get it started, and then with some decent wood glue on the back edge, just to stick a tiny little dollop somewhere in the middle, like so. So this one here I've got up to almost level, slightly off the bubble, but that doesn't matter because now we've got the piece of timber that's glued. I can basically then find somewhere to put my drill for a second. This piece of timber on the back edge of there, and again this Wix's wood glue is pretty good because it has a tendency of grabbing straight onto the 2 pieces when you stick them there, and then straight in. And then I can just finalise that on my level. So this would be basically where the ply is going to sit along for the elevated section. So again, make some final minor adjustments, and that's that. So the one screw in the middle is fine, gives you the ability to be able to just move the levels of them around, and we leave that now for the glue to set. I've also placed that great big piece of ply on top of the supports that were put in place, just to get an idea of kind of what it's going to look like. There's a few more adjustments to be made to the uprights. They're not quite level, so I've got to put some battens that brace across that and get them perfectly level. There is a slight incline on that, and that was done for a reason, simply because I'm 4.5 inches I think high at that end to allow for the trains to get underneath, and because I've got the inclines at this end, and a decline on the other side as well, I needed to make sure that this board slightly ran downhill so it meets the point where it comes into there, so everything is on a slight decline from probably about there. I think it runs slightly downhill. It's only by about ½ inch, but hopefully that shouldn't make much difference. At the west end of the station, the branch line that runs up to Exeter Central, I've started to lay the track down on that. Obviously all the ply apart from this section here, which isn't fixed yet, and there's a reason for that. But this is running up to be just a return loop which goes around, comes back down on itself again, so a simple loop on that. The track is fixed. I've got 2mm cork underneath, and I'm using these track setting tools, and if anyone's using the flexi track, these are a must-have. Fantastic idea. For a full set, I think it was about 8 or 9, I can't quite remember how many you get for the set. They're about sort of £55–60 for the set, but they're really useful for getting all your curves and even your straight bits in. And the reason, and moving back to this bit here, what I'm going to be doing is leaving this section loose for the time being, because when I come to do the point motors in here, I actually want to take this section up, turn it over, and then do all the necessary electrical work to the point motors, and then once that's done, that can be fixed in place. It saves me sort of having to get underneath the board and fiddle around with all the screwing of the point motors upside down, so it makes life so much easier. And that'll probably be the same way as when I do all the other point work that comes out of the west end of the station, that flows off down into that direction. So there'd be quite a number of points, I think it's 9 points that run through this section. Again, that piece of wood would be turned upside down and all the work done to the point motors, and likewise with down the east end of the layout. I think it's about another 9 points down that end as well. So comes in handy when you're working in smaller sections, that you can actually take them out, turn them upside down, do the work, and then put them back in place, and then just join your tracks in. Now these points I've got here were all second hand. Not sure whether I'm actually going to use them yet. If I do, I'm going to give them a good clean up. They're actually missing the springs, so if I decide to use them, and I may well use the Pico PM4 with a built-in latch, but I shall see how they'll get on with them. Give them I could probably test them just to make sure that they're decent working points. Obviously some of the track that I've got is second hand, there are a fair few bits which are new. I'm tending to use all the second hand stuff sort of out the way where you can't see it. I've made some adjustments to the lighting up in the loft as well. Some of you may have noticed in the previous video, I did originally have the light there fitted to the top of this beam, and what it was doing, it was casting a shadow. So you couldn't hardly see much of the baseboard underneath, it was just too dark. So I've moved that one up and put it in a position at one end of the loft, which has given a really good amount of lighting down that end. Obviously down the other end it's a bit dark. So hopefully sometime soon we shall get a second light up in this sort of area here, which will then cast the light over all this part of the layout. Some of you may have noticed that I've started to install, get on under, the droppers ready for connecting into the bus wire. These are a simple dropper which is ready soldered to the fish plates. I don't know whether they're any good. They're a bit of a sod to actually attach to the tracks. If anyone's using them or have used them and rate them, be interested to know in the comments section what people's view of these are. I may well opt just to going straight and soldering directly to the track if I find them a bit troublesome to stick onto the ends of the rails. So yeah, they're sort of hanging around at the moment. Whether I continue to use them, I don't know. So now I've got kind of quite a bit of the ply board in place. I can probably now run you around exactly what the shape and formation of the layout's going to be, all the plans basically. So if we start from where the class 50 is, this is going to run as a reverse loop, come around on itself all the way around up to here, and then out onto a scenery section, so into the station throat, all through the point work, onto this section here, which will all be the station. I want to try and get about 2.5 meters of station into this bit here, and then leaving at the west end of the station, got the branch line that runs up to Exeter Central, loops, comes back round, back down into the station. The rest of the point work, which will leave in that direction, follow that route all the way around. This will all be behind back scenery, so none of this will be seen. Follows that loop around to that curve. There'll be a set of points underneath here because we're coming out into laira, into this section here. And I'm going to do it on, so laira's got like the main line running next to it, which is the section of laira that I'm going to be modelling. So here there'll be the road bridge that branches across, and then the trains will come out hitting the main line, and then this reverse loop will be set further back into where all this clutter and mess is around here. So this lot will be clear, and there'll be a little bit of a support built just to take the reversing loop where it will run back on itself all the way back and into the station again. So a bit of a challenge there, but it's beginning to take shape. One of the things is being an open board as well, which I thought I'd mention actually, is some people may say, well, what happens if your trains jump off the tracks on the lower sections where there's no scenery to protect it, and potentially having a train crash to the floor? Well, what I'm going to be doing is getting some hardboard and cutting it to probably about 2 inches, so up to about here, and strips of hardboard will be pinned all the way along the edges, so it's got a guardrail just to make sure that if anything does derail, that nothing comes and crashes to the floor. That's going to be done on all the areas where there's no scenery. So hopefully everyone's got a better idea now. I think the progress over the next month is to continue laying track, working on some of the point motors. Not going to install the bus wire until I've got all this ply in place, so I know exactly where to run my wiring. But yeah, got a fair few things to get on with, but it's taking shape. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, and hopefully everyone's liked what they've seen so far. If you like the videos, any comments, please do leave comments in the comments section. I'll answer whatever comes through, and also like and subscribe and to share as well. So thank you very much.